I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today I'm joined by Mr. Bob Martin. He's a guest with a story that is as extraordinary as entertaining and fun. From a high-powered mob lawyer during Miami's wild cocaine cowboy days to a certified meditation teacher with an MSW to go with his JD, he has helped hundreds redesign their thinking for the life they dream of. Bob's journey is anything but ordinary. Now a two-time published author and professor of wellness at Elon University, Bob blends Steve's wisdom, brain science, psychology, and humor to tackle everything from breaking free of limiting beliefs, to finding clarity and resilience in life's chaos. With a knack for making big ideas relatable and plenty of stories to keep listeners hooked, he's the kind of guest who inspires, challenges, and keeps the conversation lively. If you'd like to hear more, you are more than welcome to check out his um over 125 five-star reviews he has received from his podcasting journey. So I'd like to give a huge welcome to Bob. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
Well, I read your bio and thought that it was so diverse from what you have done in your life that I thought, okay, I have to have him on because he sounds like he has a very extraordinary story. So if you could feel free to introduce yourself and share with my audience just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Bob Martin, and these days, I think that my favorite way of saying who I am is that I'm 75 years old. I have few regrets, and I'm pretty happy. And that's the most important. I've got a wonderful wife. I've got two grown kids, and we get to travel a bit, and life is great. Wasn't always that way. Just like everyone else, I've had my ups and downs, my challenges and the like. And in a certain way, I guess my story is very common in its path, but it's pretty unusual in the facts. I gotta say, I grew up in a carnival, wound up being a lawyer, not through my own choice, but just through some weird set of circumstances. Started representing folks and connecting with the mob in Miami during the cocaine cowboy days, which was a weird amalgam of the Colombians and the Peruvians and the Haitians and the Cubans and of course the Italians. And it was just interesting. And I suppose I was partying way too much. I was doing too much cocaine. It was all over the place during those days, and coming home at midnight, leaving at 4 in the morning, and you know, this is the common part of my story that my personal life was just really falling apart. I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to being cool, being arrogant, being a good lawyer, being at the top of my profession, making bundles of money. Um, but yeah, I had two kids, and I wasn't paying attention. And so I was seeing a therapist, and I came to a pretty important decision to make. And I went to my therapist. His name was, and I said to him, should I do A or should I do B? And I was pretty sure that he was just going to say to me, how therapists are. Well, Bob, what do you think you should do? You know, and but he didn't do that. He picked up three coins, three actually Chinese coins, and he started shaking them in his hands and dropping them on the table and doing some mathematical calculations and drawing some lines. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Yeah, well, my therapist has become a tarot reader or something. I don't know. But anyway, he calculated out his stuff and it came to 32. And he opened up this big old book to chapter 32 and he turned it around and he showed it to me. And the name of the chapter was Retreat. Retreat. So I cursed him out because I thought that this was not what I was paying $65 an hour for, which in those days was a lot of money. And stormed out, but took the advice, pulled back, and I went back to see him. I said, "What was that?" And he said, "Well, that was the I Ching, which is spelled. An English speaker would see the words and call it the I Ching, but it's really pronounced the I Ching." And I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, it's a Taoist practice. It teaches you about the timing in life. This was your time to retreat." And I go, "Well, what is Taoism?" So he started to explain it to me, and I thought it was pretty interesting because, see, my folks came from Eastern Europe, and my mom was Roma Gypsy. My dad was Hungarian royalty, and after World War One, because my dad, believe it or not, my dad was born in 1898. Phew,
Wow.
wow, 1898 he was born. So after World War One, the Bolsheviks invaded Hungary and they killed off all the royals, so he escaped. My mom was Roma Gypsy, and everybody killed them off. So I literally had no ancestors. And they just didn't feel there was a God that was worth worshiping after all that. So I didn't really grow up in a religious household. I didn't have any, nobody had instilled in me the belief of any kind of creature that you couldn't see, touch, or feel. And so Taoism is really not a religion. It's really a philosophy of living a effective, efficient, and virtuous life. And so as he was telling me this, it seemed to me that this was like an operating manual for how to live life. And I really liked it. But then I found out that not only did he use Taoist practices, but he was the main disciple and English language editor of a 72nd generation Taoist grandmaster from the Shaolin Temple. And I just let that sink in for a second. 72 generations of wisdom being passed down from father to son. It's about 1,400 years. And that was Master Watching Ni. So when when Nee came to Miami the next week after that, actually, and I met him, it was like it was just like wow. It's like he didn't look at you; he looked into you. That's the only, yeah. I mean, it's like he focused on a spot 4 inches behind your eyes. Uh, and I just wanted to learn everything that he could teach me, and so I studied with him and for 8 years, and that was transformational. About the same time, I ran into a little problem with my mob clients, and we figured it was best that I leave Miami. So I moved to North Carolina, and I had this opportunity of this blank canvas to rewrite my life. And so I did. And I devoted myself in the law to working only with indigent folks and being a public servant. In otherwise, I meditated and I learned how to teach meditation, and eventually retired from the law. And Elon University picked me up to teach wellness and meditation and well-being and stuff. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version.
Just that little brief introduction, and you've had a lot of things happen. Tell me a little bit about your transition from your time being a lawyer into the world of writing and publishing, because you're also a author
Hmm.
and you had transitioned into that later in life. Tell me a little bit more about what made you decide to transition from that legal career into the writing or
Mm.
publishing career.
Well, let me start off. Say my dad lived for 97 years. He was born in 1898 and died in 1996. Um, I thought he had a pretty marvelous life. I mean, there wasn't indoor plumbing when he was born. And he saw a guy walk on the moon, and I asked him, um, what was that like? And the only thing I got out of him was this. He says, "Well," because he talked like Dracula. He was Hungarian. And he said, "Well, it all happened kind of slowly." That's all I got from him. So to answer your question, it happened kind of slowly. I was a lawyer, and now I was in a smaller town, so there was a local newspaper. And I approached him and I asked him, would you guys like to have a legal blog, a legal column about, your rights and what to do with the traffic ticket, and do you need a will, and just basic stuff like that. And they said, yeah, okay. So I started writing a column for them, and that gave me, the sense of I had to, kick something out every week, and there was a deadline, and and I had an editor, and so I started to get into that flow. And the editor is such an important piece of it because they affirm you, they acknowledge you, they also help you, and they teach you, and become mentors. And so I had a very good editor, and uh, I loved the interplay that we had, doing that. And then 9/11 came along, 2001. 9/11 came along, and now remember, I don't have a particularly Christian or Western religion background. I don't even have really any kind of deistic concept. I always have like working hypotheses about how the universe works, but and then 9/11 comes along, and I'm sitting there watching for the next few years as everybody's going around killing people, in God's name. And I'm thinking, I mean, I don't have any idea about what or who or how God is, if and but just as a thought experiment, if God, is up there somewhere, and if he thinks like we do, and if he speaks English, he might be thinking, yeah, not really what I intended for this for this creation, that you run around killing in my name. So it became a thought experiment for me. I said, what would happen, if it wasn't a question of belief and faith, if we actually had proof that God existed and that God told us what his intention is, would we even listen to that? It's just a thought experiment. Are we so arrogant as human beings that we wouldn't even listen there? And so I started playing with the idea, and eventually I started creating a plot, and that led to my first novel, which is called Children of Abraham, which is a novel about God starting to leave messages on the ticker tape at the bottom of our television, saying things like, you're all my children. I created a garden. Don't mess it up. Things like that. And then, what would the world change? And then I had seven different characters. Each of them had a fatal flaw. Which flaws would redeem, who's more redeemable. For example, is a sociopath more likely to redeem under those circumstances than a person that is a people pleaser? We have, so So it was a thought experiment, and I wrote that novel. And that was satisfying. I never forget somebody once said who turned me down because you have to go try to find an agent and a publisher. But somebody who turned me down once said, "You know, Bob, whatever may happen with your book, you can be proud of yourself because very few people will complete a novel, you know?" And so that was an affirmation that, said, I can do that. But it was a struggle. And I wound up self-publishing it. Um, and that went along for a while. And I wrote blogs and columns and posted them. And I found that writing was healing for me. I often look at columnists, in the New York Times, Washington Post. I read their columns and I think, what a great freaking life that is. I mean, you know, all you have to do is get pissed off about something and you get to write about it and millions of people read it. I mean, how like super cool is that? If I ever come back, I would love to come back as a columnist. I just think that's so cool. So for me, writing worked.
Can you explain the difference that you've experienced between traditional publishing and self-publishing?
Oh yeah, 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 sure, sure. So I self-published this book, and they the Sharks. I didn't know anything about publishing, and everything costs money. I mean, to get it edited costs money. To publish it costs money. You have to buy this package. You're talking thousands of dollars, and then that doesn't mean nothing because then you got to promote it. And then the promotion, they want to sell you more packages, and then you get a consultant. And I was eaten up by the sharks of the business. And so finally, I decided that I would just go to a printer and print a few thousand copies of it and sell them over the internet. And we sold a couple of thousand copies, and I still got probably 500 in my garage. um, and that's how it stayed. It had some moderate success, and in the publishing industry, a few thousand copies is already some moderate success. And then it kind of sat for a while. And then I wrote my second book, which is not fiction. It is, well, I have to give you a little backstory. May I? Can I give you a little backstory on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when I went through my, I guess, spiritual transformation, the wife that I married, well, let's put it this way. She did not marry the person that I became. And so it just wasn't working. We got divorced. And later on, I met my current wife, who is an absolute saint. And where I am in my life and what gives me, pleasure and what gives me what's uplifting for me is to, contribute and ease the suffering, that is out there in the world. That's what my Taoist Buddhist values tell me to do. Her Christian values were the same, but she's a Bible literalist, a Southern Baptist, actually. If you know anything about Southern Baptists, it's a very conservative Bible literalist, sect. So, but we did not meet on our cosmologies for sure. Um, but I mean, our values were the same, and the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Lao Tzu, there's not a hair's breadth of difference between them. So I started thinking, well, if I could just take the writings of the Tao and reimagine them as in Christian language, maybe if I showed it to her, she would see that my stuff wasn't so weird. Because, when you read Taoist stuff, it's very densely packed. For example, here is a couplet from the first chapter in of the Tao Te Ching. It says, "Caught in desire, you see the manifestation. Free from desire, you see the mystery. Now, come on. What Western mind can take a look at that language and say, "Oh yeah, I understand that," right?
Mm.
Um, but but if you translate that into, Christian language, it becomes something that you can map onto because it really is the same thing. It's that God created the universe is all it's really saying, and that if you see what God created, then you see the creation. If you sense a connection to God, you see the mystery. And so it's like what Christians call thin places, connection, that kind of thing, egolessness. And so I started to reimagine that. And when I showed it to her, she goes, "Wow, it's really cool. It's great." And so I kept going. And finally, I did all 81 chapters of the Tao Te Ching. And through some really strange set of circumstances, a publisher heard about it and reached out to me. Now, all of a sudden, I had an editor, I had a team, I had a publicity team, I had everything, 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 and it didn't cost me anything. And the book got published, and here it is. I am the way. Beautiful publishing, and it's all in there. And then, she said, "Well, what else you got?" And I said, "Well, I got this novel that I wrote way back when." She goes, "Let's publish that." So we took it to her. She looked at it. She goes, 94,000 words. Are you nuts? You got to cut it down to 60, 65,000. Yeah, we can't sell it at 90. So I said, "You mean I got to take out every third word?" She goes, "Yeah, you can do this. There's a lot of fluff in there." And so between the two of us, we worked on it, got it down to about 60,000 words, and it's so much better, so much more tightly packed, and it's like a page turner. Go bam, bam, bam. So she published that, and now I'm working on my third novel, my second novel, third book.
It's just amazing because a lot of people, you hear a lot of when people get into the traditional publishing, there's always such controversy around trying to get a book published. And you're right, everything does cost money. It's not cheap to do anything anymore. Um, it comes to be where self-publishing is the cheapest way to do it.
Is the cheapest way?
Well,
Well, it depends on what you mean by, you can get on Amazon Kindle or you can get on Amazon for very little money. But, if you take a look at those books, if you take a look at the books that are selling on Kindle for 99 cents or they're 17.95 in paperback, and you take a look at their ratings, the ratings are like 3,256,000 or in maybe in memoirs, you might be at 894,000. So, yes, you can self-publish and get it done fairly cheaply, but if you want to get it out there, you have to publicize it. And the publicity, now you're talking, Google ads and you're talking Facebook ads and even that you need somebody that's going to manage all that unless you want to spend your whole day answering questions and posting things on Facebook and spend your life doing that. You need to hire somebody that's going to be a virtual assistant. And then there are ways to do it and ways not to do it. And it's just can run into a lot of money because there's a lot of competition. If you get a traditional publisher, it doesn't cost anything. I mean, my entire expense so far has been a few $100s that I've, thrown in to publicize it to my friends and my circle. But she has the sales force. She gets it on the rack at Barnes and Noble. She gets it in so but it's hard. Usually it's hard. I just lucked out. It was just lucked out. Um, so
from the books that you've published, what's been the overall critical success or just some of the what the general public has said about the books that you've published? And have you had anyone feel really related to the book where you've had someone reach out and be like, I can 100% relate to you on this, and then they kind of name that particular story. So I guess
mhm.
explain a little bit about what the general feedback has been from the books that you've published?
Yeah. So in from I Am the Way, which is the book I told you, which was a Christian devotional based on Taoist writings, I get letters all the time from Canada, UK, America, mostly on the coasts, not too much from, the mid-America, but some. And mostly they are letters that say, I left the church because of its exclusivity. I couldn't bide the science, number of other reasons. And frankly, the church has done a lot of harm, especially among marginalized communities, a lot of othering, a lot of calling folks sinners just for being who they are. There's been a lot of harm done, and many of those folks, left the church. Many of those folks also kind of started growing up in a church, but it's kind of a generational thing. If you look at people that were born in the 1900s, they had kids in the 1930s. Those parents who were born in the 30s and 40s generally were more church going, and so they brought their kids to church more. But each generation has been less and less. And so there's a lot of people. The fastest growing denomination in this country are the nuns. People that when you ask them, what is your religious affiliation, they go, none. So, so I'm getting a lot of letters from people that have left the church for one reason or another, but never intended to leave their relationship with the divine, however they might define that. And what they found in my book was a way of reestablishing that connection without the dogma and the doctrine that they found objectionable. So yeah, that's very heartwarming for me to get those letters.
Between your book, Children of Abraham and I Am the Way, what's the overall message that you would like readers to have, or the main takeaway that you want readers to have when they read the books?
Um, I would like them, to simply, whew, wow. I'm thinking like there's a bunch of ideas going through my head. I think that if we can kind of understand that there are some universal characteristics that lead one to having a happy life. And this also comes out of my Taoist training and my training with the I Ching and I teach meditation. And so I've taught meditation now for about 15 years. I've had hundreds of students and I've learned from my students because I see, they come into the meditation class with different ideas about life that are not helpful, that lead to unhappiness. And then, through the course, I see them change and shift those perspectives to perspectives that lead to happiness. And ultimately, the all the teachings of all of the um, wisdom teachers, Lao Tzu, the Buddha, Jesus, Mandela, Gandhi, all of these, Martin Luther King, all of these wisdom teachers all said the same thing, that if you want to live a happy life, be loving, be kind, be fair. And that leads to being happy. The Dalai Lama says the same thing. He says, for all my study, I can tell you that my religion is very simple. It's kindness, and my temple is my heart. So it is the same message no matter where you go in the world. And, whatever you may think of what the divine is, or whether there's some kind of universal intelligence that binds us together, or even if there's not there, even if you look at it from a perspective of anthropological evolutionary psychology, We came together and we formed tribes for self-protection, and so we needed to develop an ability to connect. And connection is a skill, and it can be learned and it can be unlearned. Um, trauma, betrayal, those things can unlearn our sense and ability and our skill of being connected. But it can also be learned. And I think that we have a responsibility to connection, awe, and beauty in our lives.
You know, when you said that you were 75, which I've got to say, you look good for 75. I mean, you do not look like it. You don't look to be 75. So when you said that was a shock, I was like, hey, that's good for his age.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you. I have a t-shirt when I go to the gym because I go to the gym, and I'm doing a bicep curl, with maybe 15 pounds in each hand, or maybe a 30-pound bar, 40-pound bar. And I see these other guys over here, they're doing bicep curls with 140 pounds, and you kind of feel like a little bit of a weakling next to the 20-year-olds. So I got me a t-shirt, and it's right in the middle, there's a big 75, and on top it says 3/4 of a century, and underneath it says still showing up. Now when I go in a gym and I'm wearing that t-shirt, I get pats on the back. Hey, oh man, glad you're here. So
you know, to be able to be working out at 75, though, a lot of people can't do that. So that, I think that's a huge inspiration even to like people that are your age and even to the younger generation that shows that while you're while most people tend to go down in years at that point, it's still possible to actually get out and be able to exercise.
mhm.
Um, you've conquered so many things in life. You've done so many amazing things. Is there still anything on a, do you have anything on a bucket list that you would still like to try to achieve um, before you pass away or anything?
um, yeah, it's interesting that you asked that, and I'm going to give you a couple of random thoughts around that. Okay, because I mean, ultimately, my answer is no, but that's a qualified no. Um, there's a line in the Tao Te Ching. By the way, the Tao Te Ching is the seminal book of Taoism, and what it translates to be, Ching means the classical book, Tao means the way, and Te means virtue. So the Tao Te Ching is the classical book of the way of virtue. And it's 81 short little one-page chapters. But there is a line in it that says, from inside my house, I can see the world through my window. And, it speaks to the idea that all of the knowledge and everything that you need to know is already inside you. So I could go to France, or I could go to Amsterdam, or I could go to Thailand, and they'll all be adventures. But ultimately, the joy and the excitement and the seeing of new things is I'm of course it's fun and exciting, but I already know what that is. I'm not diminishing the importance of it, but I'm just saying. So to say that I feel like I need to go to Thailand, or I need to do this or need to do that is I can't say that's on my bucket list. Here is what it is for me. There are two things. One is every morning I have a morning ritual, and in that morning ritual, I always affirm that it's a new day, and that I'm trading a day of my life. I'm trading a day of my life for that, for this day. And the only thing that's going to be left in it is whatever I leave in it. And so my bucket list is a daily thing. My bucket list is that today I'm going to leave something that's worthwhile in this day. And so you just go day by day. And then I also love this quote from Jimmy Carter that my faith compels me to do whatever I can for whoever I can as much as I can for as long as I can. And the other question that I is the question that kind of drives my life is, have I done enough? And so, it keeps me pretty busy. That keeps me pretty busy. So it's kind of a no and kind of a yes.
One thing I've learned, and I've just learned it, it's easy. You can't really plan anymore because from my experience, every time I've planned something, it just something always happens to where it doesn't happen and it falls through.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just learned that if you wake up every day without no plan and just kind of go with the flow and just kind of take it day by day, it's one of those things where it's easier to prepare to do it. So, I don't think a lot of people have bucket lists a lot anymore because it's one of those things where you can plan it and then something else happens and then that'll never come true. So I kind of relate to you a little bit about no, but no, you don't have one. For me, it's the same thing, but I mean, if something did come up to where it was like, oh, I would be interested in doing it, I would probably do it. It would just have to kind of, I guess, would have to come up.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear what you say, and it's very true. And I think one of my mentors gave me the best advice in that area. He said, "Look, you don't have to worry about the future. What you have to be concerned about is taking care of what's on your plate right now. Just do the best that you can with whatever is on your plate right now, and the future will take care of itself. Things will come along. A way back, you may or may not remember this, probably 10, 15 years ago, there was this big fad called The Secret, the law of attraction. And Oprah was into it, and it was big, multiple bestseller, The Secret. And the idea was that if you visualize what you want, and if you send that energy out into the universe, if you visualize it in the greatest detail and just picture it and do all this, that the universe will actually bring it to you. So you could visualize becoming wealthy and the universe would make you wealthy. And it was a big fad that went on for a while, but it kind of died out because, well, a lot of people found out that that didn't happen. But in a way, it does happen if you think of it this way. Like, life is like a river and it brings all kinds of things across your path, thousands of different things. But just like, let's say you buy a new Chevy Malibu. Now, you never noticed Chevy Malibus around before. Now you buy a Chevy Malibu. Now you see them everywhere. Did they just appear? No. It's that your brain has like a semi-permeable membrane and it only allows stuff that's important to you up into your consciousness. So it's not that they weren't there, it's that you never noticed them. Now you're noticing it because it's important to you. So if you visualize what you want, and you think, I really want to go to New Zealand. I really want to go to New Zealand, right? So I really think about that and I picture it and I put it in my brain that that's something that's important to me. So as things pass by me in life, there might be a little ad about a New Zealand trip here that, catches my attention. I learn a little bit about what it takes to go to New Zealand. And then I see something over here and I notice it. And, little by little, I become more conscious and more aware of things. And as I become more conscious and more aware of them, more opportunities seem to come. And then all of a sudden, the perfect thing will land in my lap. And everybody will say that I'm lucky, but it wasn't luck. It was the fact that I geared my brain to look for that stuff out there in the universe, you know? And so I think it's good to have ideas of things that you want to do. It's just not unhealthy. It is not happiness producing to need to do them. When you put it on a bucket list, you're saying, I need to do this. I need to do this before I die. And that sets you up for failure. If it's something you want to do, then, when the opportunity comes by, you do it. If you don't do it, I do. It's okay.
That kind of makes a good point because a lot of people, when they have bucket lists, it's something that they do want to do. I haven't really thought of it like that. But, that's a good point. That usually that's how kind of how people make bucket lists. It's kind of they always say, "I want to do this before I die." And it's like a have to necessity that they need to do.
Hmm.
That's actually a good point. You know, my podcast is kind of a good example of that too. I didn't really imagine myself being a podcaster. I had always dreamt of being a podcaster, but I didn't expect to do it as like a kind of a job. I thought it
Hmm.
was just a hobby. And then it was like you said, it was just like the right thing came along at the right time. I remember I had just gotten fired, which I was not sad about it, from a job that I really, really hated. That I worked there a very short period of time, and I remember that they fired me for kind of a dumb reason, which was I won't get into it, but I remember right when it happened, I looked at my email and saw that there was an email about this podcasting opportunity. And at that point, the podcast I had already started the podcast. It was still fairly new. I'd probably been posting maybe a month and a half at that point. And there was an email that from the guy that works at Podmatch, which anyone that does Podmatch knows. I've talked about him on here multiple
Yeah, he's
times.
great.
I even interviewed him for a show, and that episode's out now. That um yeah, Alex was the one that reached out to me, and he was like, "Yeah, I came across your podcast and thought that you would be a good fit for our network." And at that point, I had also dealt with a lot of scam emails for job offers and even fell victim to one. And I was so hesitant at first about it because I thought it's happened twice. Once I fell for it, the other time I didn't. So I thought, do I really want to really give this a go? And I said, okay, I thought, okay, let me do some research because now I research everything now to make sure it's legit and that there's no scam or anything.
Hmm.
I didn't find one negative review. I didn't really even find one 4-star review. It was everything was rated with 5 stars. And I thought, well, I haven't seen anything negative about it. I haven't seen any critiques. I think maybe this is a sign. And so I emailed him back and I said, I'd be interested in joining, um, and just kind of having a feel for it. Signed up for it, and here I am interviewing you from there. So it's like it was one of the better decisions I've made. I didn't expect this to be like a full-time job though. It started out as a hobby. And it's it's really rare for people to have a job where they can work from home and that it's like a enjoyable job. Most people when you hear them work and they're working a basic 9 to 5 job that they hate, but they have to work there because it pays well and that is their only way of living. You rarely hear stories of people that say, yes, I go to work every day and I love my job. There's people out there that are like that, and there are jobs to where they are enjoyable, but they come very few and far between. It's hard to kind of find a most times when you ask them, "Oh, how do you like your job?" It's awful. I hate it, but I can't. There's nothing else for me to do. And so it's rare for a job to come around that's actually enjoyable. Like I really love doing this. And I've told people that if this actually became my main career in life, if I was meant to be a podcaster for my job, I wouldn't be mad about it. I would not be mad about it at all. What's one thing that you've learned through this whole journey from being a lawyer to being a author? What's been the biggest thing that you've learned during this whole journey?
Um, the biggest thing and the most important thing is that um, two things. Can I give two things?
Yeah,
One,
two things.
one. I think that the major mistake that most people make in their life is trying to stop. May I use the word? May I use a little French word here? You know what I mean? People try to stop the shit that comes at them in life. They try to stop it, and you can't stop it. Life has a lot of joy, it has a lot of happiness, and it has a lot of shit. And that's just life. And you're gonna get it. I like this metaphor that we have a cup, and that cup is where the shit gets poured into. Now, when it fills the cup up and it starts overflowing, that's what we kind of call overwhelm. That's when the intensity of it becomes hard to handle for us. Most people try to reduce the flow and they get real frustrated because you can't do that. What you got to do is you got to grow the cup. You got to grow the cup. You have to increase your tolerance for discomfort so that the shit doesn't bother you as much. It's like two kids fall and skin their knees in the playground. One has a high tolerance for pain, the other doesn't. One of them goes wow, wow, wow all the way home, the other goes on playing.
Hmm.
Which one is the happier? So the pain is the same. The pain is the same. The tolerance for the pain, and that's what we teach in meditation, how to grow the cup. So that's one thing. The other thing that's so, so, so important is that you are not your thoughts. Every single one of my students comes into my class believing that they are their thoughts. They are caught up in their thoughts. Their thoughts are their reality. It is who I am. And when they begin to step back and observe their thoughts, they see their thoughts passing through. Where's the thought come from? It comes from your database or from something, and then it's there for a moment and then it's gone, and then it's replaced by another one, and then it's gone, then it's replaced by another one, and then it's gone. You can't buy a quart of milk with your thoughts. They they're not physical, they're not real. You're not your thoughts. You are so much more. You are the creator of your thoughts, and all that you need to do is to begin to reprogram your database. And you just do that by observing your thoughts. Now that's a skill. I'm not saying anybody can do it, but Noah, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been telling somebody a joke, or even you're telling a story like you just did on the podcast, and there's a little part of your brain that is kind of commenting on how well the story's going and whether or not it's being received well or not, or the like. Am I right?
I've done that, yes.
Yeah, or you're telling a joke and you're also looking and evaluating whether or not the people are getting it or whether they're going to like it and the like. That
Hmm.
other part of your brain is the observer. That is who you really are, and we're just disconnected from it, and we sense it, we feel it, but we never intentionally go there and connect with that part, which is our intuitive, innate, divine intelligence. And it is so much more than the mere flow of your thoughts. So that I would just say you're not your thoughts, you're the creator of your thoughts. You're so much more than your thoughts.
You said it really, really well there, and I appreciate you for so much for coming on today and, sharing this a lot of wisdom. It's, I think in this day and age, a lot of people would need this kind of motivation to be able
Hmm.
to pursue what they want. And, from you living this really interesting career, you have a lot of good aspects on life, and I can see you being a huge inspiration for people.
Thank
Um,
you.
to if my listeners want to learn more about you and would like to maybe if they would like to check your books out and maybe ask you questions about it because
Mhm.
I'm not the brain brainiac here on this. I don't know anything about it. So if people would like to get in contact with you or just like to learn more about your story and maybe want to check some of your work out, where can they best find you at?
Everything is consolidated on my website, which is called A Wise and Happy Life. The wiseandhappylife.com. There's a lot of free stuff, a lot of free stuff there. Instructional books, self examination, questions, a couple of books on how to meditate. If you want to get into classes on meditation, they're available there. And if you want to test the waters with like a little trial test, I have an option for doing that. You can contact me by email. You can set up a phone call with me. I'm happy. I'm happy to be. Remember, my question is, have I done enough? So lay it on me.
Well, to my listeners, I will put his website down there and I'll put some social media links down there as well if you'd like to connect with him on the social media side as well. Um, Real quick, I did see that you actually also have a podcast, which is a Wise and Happy Life. Explain a little bit just real quickly about that podcast and what you would like listeners to know about the podcast.
So you mentioned going with the flow a little bit ago. Okay, my little tagline is this: in order to go with the flow, you have to understand the flow. If you're on a nice, calm river, you can lay back and relax. But if it turns into white water, you have to act differently. And if you're headed towards a waterfall, you have to act even differently. If it's a thunderstorm or if it's a gentle rain, these are all flows. In human behavior, there are times when people want to listen to you and times they don't. There are times when you have to move forward and times when you have to retreat. There are times when you need to punch through and there's times when you need to wait. You have to understand the flow and the timing, and that takes wisdom. So, the name of the podcast is A Wise and Happy Life. So, yes, we can learn the skills that make us happy, but if we don't understand the culture that we're in, it's going to be for naught because we won't understand the flow. So I try to combine an understanding of the culture and society and forces that are acting on us as well as what we can do internally to have a wise and happy life.
And I will also put his links. I'll also link the podcast in there as well. So if you would like to, feel free to check it out. You are more than welcome to. And as again, I'll put his social media and his website down there as well. Um, if you'd like to follow me on social media and just kind of keep updates on the podcast, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lethal Venom Podcast on there. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, it's Noah's Podcast. And as always, you can feel free to subscribe to the Lethal Venom Podcast wherever you get your podcast from. It's available on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere. So feel free to subscribe to it so you can get notified new episodes. Again, want to give a huge thank you and shout out to Bob for coming on today and sharing his story with me and my listeners. And hopefully, my listeners enjoyed the episode as well. Um, Hope everyone has a great rest of your day and week. Still be safe out there. Make good decisions, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.
And be happy.
And be happy.